Hello everyone, this is Ashish and you're listening/watching to Spacecast. It is Wednesday and it is that time of the week where you get some free space technology, free rocketry from a former ISRO scientist. Now the amount of requests that I've been getting to bring back the Spacecast from you lovely people has been definitely obnoxious. Now last night I was in a restaurant and someone just pulled a gun to my face and said, bring the next Spacecast or I'm going to keep your girlfriend as prisoner. In the last few seconds I've got a gazillion request of bringing back the Spacecast. Just kidding, but yes, the request has been humongous. Now it is back to you and I promise I'll try. Not sure, but I'll try to bring a new Spacecast every week. There are a few guests lined up too who have very good knowledge in the field of rocketry and space technology. So they are going to come over here, talk to me, and you will be able to listen to them, right? The topic of discussion today would be the history of rocketry in India. In the last video, the last Spacecast podcast, where I talked about the history of rocketry itself, there I talked about it in the end of the podcast that what do you want? Should I make the next podcast on history of ISRO? And the comment section was filled with yes, bring a history of ISRO. And basically I've read these three books. Where did the third one go? Must be here. Yeah, these books are not only for show, but I've read them too. Now this number one book, I've talked about it hundreds of times. It is ISRO, A Personal History by R. Armudan. The second one is the most famous book on this face of the country. This is Wings of Fire. And the third one, I've not yet started properly reading it, but you must have heard of it, Ready to Fire, a story on Nambi Narayan. Now, basically, this book is the most important one if you want to learn about the history of ISRO. I'll link it all down in the description box if you're watching it on YouTube. And this one is half on ISRO. After that, this is basically the career of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. And after that, he went into DRDO and rest of the half of the book is continued in DRDO. Right. So I'm not going to definitely pick up direct points from these books. I'm going to pick a few of the things that I learned from these books and also a few of the things that I learned from the people who had actually been part of history of ISRO themselves. They gave those speech and I was lucky and fortunate enough to sit on those seats to listen to those people who have worked in ISRO during the 1960s and the 1970s and the 1980s. They were basically part of history of ISRO and they forged and formed ISRO into what it is today. The nerve-wracking experiences that you would get by listening to those people who had won Padma Shri, those people also gave very different insight about how ISRO used to be back then. So we are going to talk about the history of ISRO in that sense. So let's get back to straight up 1962 when Dr. Vikram Sarabhai decided that India needs to explore in space domain, use the technology of space technology and rocketry to use a lot of things for mankind. Basically, everything that he planned at that time was to harness the space technology and use that science to utilize it for human mankind on the planet, right? So he decided to form an organization. At that time, it was not a government organization. He started it just like a startup. He was already founder of PRL, that was Physical Research Laboratory, established in Ahmedabad. Till this day, it is still there. A lot of people from IST do get placed over there as well. And then he decided to start something in space domain. So initially what he did is that he picked a lot of scientists from a lot of research institutions in this country. And also he tried to pick few from Department of Atomic Energy, and that's the person who wrote this book. Actually, he did not wrote this book. His wife wrote it, Geeta Armudan, and he was the only one from Department of Atomic Energy, and the rest of the 5 people that Dr. Vikram Sarabhai chose were all from PRL. Right. So these 6 people went to NASA, get trained over there in sounding rocket technology. Now sounding rocket also has a lot of domains, the ranging part, the payload part and all those, and each people had some specific area which they studied. They came back after learning from there and they started what we know today as TERLS, that is Thumba Equatorial Launch Station, rocket launch station. All right. So what is sounding rocket? You should understand that first, only then you'll understand that why did they start with sounding rocket. Sounding rocket is not the rocket that you see right now, the PSLV, the GSLV, or even the rockets like Aryan and all that. Sounding rocket is very, very small, but it is the initial stage where you start building a nation's rocketry, right? It is completely made of solid stages. It is just one or two stages rocket, and it is not going to put a satellite in the orbit. Matter of fact, the payload capacity is somewhere just around 10 kgs. Okay. What it is for getting atmospheric data. It is for doing some science experiments, right? So what sounding rocket will do, it will go up and it will come down. Just like it is said, whatever goes up comes back down, right? It is going to have a parabolic trajectory. It will go up, and obviously at some point the propellant will run out, the fuel will run out, the oxidizer will run out, and the velocity will keep on decreasing. At some point the velocity becomes 0, and at that point it will try to come back to Earth. Now what we want is that when the velocity becomes 0, at that point we want the sounding rocket to be in ionosphere. Now ionosphere is a very good spot to get a lot of information about the atmosphere. The payload will be having all those instruments. It will bring the data back. Now if the velocity becomes 0 in ionosphere, that means that it is going to have the maximum time spent in ionosphere, because the velocity will be minimum over there. Velocity minimum, that means the time will be maximum, right? Time is equal to distance by speed, right? So if the speed is minimum over there, the time spent will be maximum, but at the same time it is still in moving situation only, so it will have somewhere around like 10 minutes over there spent, but will be sufficient to get data. Now any rocket will be crossing through ionosphere. For example, the rockets that you see today, which are launching satellites and all that, will be crossing the ionosphere, but the time spent over there will be very, very low, because it is still accelerating. When it has already crossed ionosphere, it will reach thermosphere and all that, right? So what a sounding rocket can do cannot be done by any other rocket that is made to launch satellites or to launch human beings, right? Also, why is it called sounding rocket? Because when it is up there, it is sending information down. Information will be sent down in the form of electromagnetic waves. These are called like sounding information back down. It's not because that makes a lot of sound. Every rocket makes a lot of sound, right? But because it is sounding information back down there, that is why it is called sounding rocket. Now another question that might be there, why did those 6 people and why did Dr. Vikram Sarabhai decided to bring that TERLS in Tumba only? One reason, that is it is TERLS, T stands for Tumba. But why did they make sounding rocket launch station that's down south, that too in West Coast? If you do not know, Trivandrum is on West Coast, right? So always if you want to have a rocket launching station or a launch pad, then it should be on East Coast, because it gives you benefit because of the direction of the spin of the Earth. The sun rises first in Japan, right? I'll explain that some other day, but a lot of you guys might be knowing what is the reason. All the rocket launching launch pads should be on East Coast. That gives you benefit and you'll be spending lesser fuel. But the reason is because there's something that passes through Tumba. What is that? That is magnetic equator. Now there's some geometric equator and there's something that we call magnetic equator. Now geometric equator and magnetic equator are not superimposed. They will be having some inclination, some difference, and the magnetic equator passes very close from Tumba, and that is why you are going to get a lot of very good atmospheric data if you launch the sounding rockets over there. So you understand 100% about sounding rocket. Very simple rocket, only made of solid stages, very small actually. The initial rockets that were made, they were Rohini 75, Rohini 100, Rohini 200. Now generally when someone talks about a stage, let us say L110 stage, right? They basically talk about the 110 is not let us say the thrust, or it is not the diameter of the rocket. It is actually the propellant loading, right? The L40 stages, that is 40 ton of propellant loaded. But over here, the let us say R75, 7500, 200, these are just the diameter of that stage. So right now what is going on is RH200, RH300 Mark II and RH560. These are operational right now, and RH300 and RH560 are now being launched from Sriharikota launch pad of sounding rockets, and still in Tumba there is RH200 getting launched. Now as far as I know, maybe it has changed now, but every Wednesday, every alternate Wednesday, that is 2 Wednesday every month, they'll be still launching sounding rockets to get those atmospheric data, and same is going on in Sriharikota as well, right? So these are just diameter. If it is RH200, then 200 would be the diameter. So you can understand 200 is not huge. It is nothing comparable to big rockets, right? So initially they started over there, and at that time, if you ask me, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam was a range operator. He also became project director for a lot of big missions like SLV-3 and all, but that was his task. Everyone got some task, and this R. Armudan also had some job, which later everyone has some job or the other, divided accordingly. But over time, if you work on the same domain for 10-20 years, then obviously you will get specialized almost everywhere. Then they reach the positions of directors and things like that. So there are only handful of chairmen that has been in ISRO. There's one, obviously, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. Then came for a very brief period of time. Okay, I'm going to be doing a little bit of Google so that I remember their names properly. But after that came Satish Dhawan. And what was the actual reason? I'm going to talk about that, how Vikram Sarabhai passed away, and then people had to take over. And there were a lot of turbulent times that ISRO had to face after passing away of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, because this is the leader and he had not nourished any other leader, because his death was very, very sudden. Until this day, a lot of people will be claiming that it might be a conspiracy. Also, the death of Dr. Homi Bhabha, it was also like very sudden. Okay, it happened in 1966. So let's get back to 1962. These people went to NASA, got trained over there, established turtles over here. They were working hard. And somewhere around 1966, Dr. Homi Bhabha passed away. Now, Dr. Homi Bhabha was head of Department of Atomic Energy at that time. Obviously, at that time it was Department of Atomic Energy, right? It was not named Bhabha Atomic Research Center because Dr. Homi Bhabha was still alive, right? But after that it was named like that, and BARC became one part of it, right? Also, what we know as Vikram Sarabhai Space Center was not Vikram Sarabhai Space Center back then. It was SSTC, and later, after the death of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, it was named as Vikram Sarabhai Space Center. Okay. Also, UR Rao also became the fourth chairman of ISRO, and right now what used to be called ISAC, ISRO Satellite Application Center, most likely A stands for application, I'm not sure, but it is now called URSC, UR Rao Satellite Center. Very, very recently it has changed. All right. Matter of fact, a lot of older employees will still be having iCards with ISAC written on that. Okay. So to respect these people, we give the name to the various center. For example, SDSC, that is Satish Dhawan Space Center, SHAR, was named after Satish Dhawan. That was the third chairman. Okay, I'm going way past ahead. Let's get back to 1966 when Dr. Homi Bhabha passed away. He was the chairman of Department of Atomic Energy. When he passed away, none other than Dr. Vikram Sarabhai became the chairman of DAE. And keep in mind, so far ISRO, which is not even known as ISRO right now, it is known as INCROSPAR, right? Indian National Committee for Space Research. Let me confirm that. Google, using the power of Google. So yeah, most likely it is that Indian National Committee for Space Research. And then after some time it became ISRO when it was separated from Department of Atomic Energy and become a part of Department of Space. Okay. So, 1966, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai became the chairman of DAE. Now, good thing happened for ISRO because now the funding towards ISRO increased, right? So, the growth became very fast. ISRO was going very good. What Vikram Sarabhai did is that he even convinced a lot of scientists, Indian scientists who were working abroad, even working in NASA or top institutes abroad, he went and personally talked to them and told that, listen, we are starting something on our own. Here's something that you can do over there. Either you can have your 9 to 5, either you can be part of this huge system, or you can be part of something big that we are creating in your homeland, right? So a lot of people got convinced. They came back to India, started this small organization, and a lot of you must have heard that how they started initially. They were transporting like satellites on the back of the bullock cart, transporting the payload of these Rohini rockets on the back of the bicycles, right? So initially it was nothing. They built it and made it what it is today, to the point that India is known for ISRO. If you pick top 5 space organizations in this world, I bet you ISRO is going to be one of it. It has done some marvelous projects, some marvelous tasks, like landing on moon, not landing, but reaching moon, orbiting moon on one go. Other things also, it has done a lot of miraculous tasks. Okay. Now, big contribution of that, like the biggest contribution of that, goes to Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, because he was the visionary. He saw it before anyone else could even think of it, or before anyone else could even digest that this can happen. Is India has just gotten in its independence, and you are thinking that we can compete with NASA and these other country space organization. But he said that no, listen, if we want to grow, this is the technology that we need to harness. And some other day, maybe I'm going to talk about, a lot of people will be saying, listen, man, we are having a lot of starving people down on Earth. Why do you want to go to Mars? Why do you want to send satellites? Today's world, nothing is actually possible without rocketry. And a huge reason why India is so much developed today, so far ahead, is the ISRO that is present over here. And there's a very funny story talked about over here also, that when India sent its first 6 scientists to NASA to get trained in the domain of rocket science, at that very time Pakistan also sent few of its scientists to NASA to get trained and start their own space organization. They did start their own space organization, but as you know, it is nothing even close to ISRO, because of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. And then the bad incident happened in 1971, I think 30th December, is it? Let me confirm. Most likely, 30th December 1971. Dr. Vikram Sarabhai passed away. Nobody knows the reason. A lot of people said that I just met him few hours ago and he was perfectly fine. Now this is what he used to do. He used to move from Ahmedabad to Kerala, from one part of the country to another part of the country, managing everything from this country to another country, trying to get new employees, good scientists over there. So he was continuously moving, managing properly. He was a charismatic personality, right? Everyone respected him and everyone wanted to prove themselves to get the thumbs up of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. That was the kind of person. He was a perfect leader, right? And when he passed away, everyone was in shock. He was found dead in Kovalam. Kovalam is somewhere around like 20 to 30 minutes away from Trivandrum main city. If you go by bike or something, I've been there many times, and it was one of the favorite spots of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai also. He used to go over there every now and then, and that's where he was found dead. And then the turmoil started, like nobody understood what to do. The leader goes away, and this is still in the starting phases. Just they're building something up. Keep in mind, ISRO did not actually started doing or producing outputs up till the late 1990s. All right. And so you can understand how much of an initial stage they must have been in 1970s, right? So it was all haphazardous. Then for some time, Professor MGK Menon, from January to September 1972, he was the chairman. But then they had to bring someone with a very good leadership capability, and enter Professor Satish Dhawan, one who was built and trained in Caltech and was currently director of ISC Bangalore. Very, very charismatic person again, and he did things in a little bit different manner. Like when he got into ISRO and he said that, okay, I'm going to take control from now on. But here's the thing. I want to be the director of IC Bangalore as well. I want to do both. So we will need to bring the headquarters to Bangalore, move it from Trivandrum to Bangalore. And it is written in this book that there was a lot of problem also. People from Kerala were not liking it. They were thinking that every power is going to shift away from Kerala to Bangalore, right? So there was a lot of turmoil here and there. There were some protests also, but we know that now the headquarter of ISRO is in Bangalore only. So Professor Satish Dhawan came over here, and he was the chairman for 12 straight years from 1972 to 1984. And he saw a lot of flaws in the way that people right now in ISRO were working. And like they were working straight up day and night whenever they could work. And he came over, hey, wait, what are you guys doing? See, you need to take proper rest. Right now, it is 12 o'clock at night. You need to go home, take proper sleep, come back tomorrow in the morning, and we are going to work efficiently. And he brought structure over there. And he said that, okay, we need to have proper payment for the same level of employees. Everything should be proper. Everything should be governed. It is a organization. We need to treat it like that. We need to treat it the way that we see it to be in 20 to 30 years. And that's the big part of ISRO. That is the big change in ISRO. And that is why he is respected so much throughout the ISRO. And as you know, Sriharikota is named after him only. And I've gone into Sriharikota Space Center, Satish Dhawan Space Center. And if you are lucky enough or smart enough to get in there, through the main gate from where they check the ID card and all, there's a straight path. You keep on going and you'll find a round kind of park thing from which 4 different roads bifurcate, and you'll see a gigantic statue of Satish Dhawan. So definitely respect deserved over there. After that, from 1984 to 1994, Professor Udupi Ramchandra Rao became the chairman, and after him it is named UR Rao Space Satellite Center. I've already talked about that. And then see, all the ISRO chairmen know, anyone who is a space enthusiast must have heard about all of their names. Dr. Kasturi Ragan, 1994 to 2003, also very well known. Then G. Madhavan Nair, he was chairman from 2003 to 2009, and in this book Armudan has talked about that he was batchmate of him. They worked together. And by the way, our Armudan also became the director of Sriharikota. He became the director of ISAC also later. So they all played very good role. They were present when ISRO was infant. From the birth of ISRO, they were there. And definitely that is why I read this book and tried to learn it. I started reading this book just when I got into ISRO. I bought it from the money that they give. In BARC training school, they'll give you 10,000 rupees to invest in buying books. Okay. And if you do not invest 100% of that 10,000 in buying books, then you'll have to return the money. So I bought a lot of books, and one of the first books that I bought was this one, but I did not read it because I was not having any time. I decided that I'll start reading once I get into ISRO. And when I got, the first thing I did is started reading this book, and it was definitely amazing. Okay. And again, after that, from 2009 to 2014, it was Dr. K. Radhakrishnan. You must have heard of him, the man who brought the flag of India to Mars. And then A.S. Kiran Kumar, all of them are significant personality. And after that, right now is K7, right? So all of these people who made ISRO to what it is, I'll tell you some of the very nerve-wracking experiences that ISRO has had very tough time while growing up. Obviously, because it is a dangerous business. It is like nuclear power plants are dealing with huge amount of power, but rocketry is dealing with even bigger amount of power. For that instance, when it launches, the amount of power is in gigawatts, right? And in power plants, it is just in megawatts. So the danger with that is also very significant. Why are nuclear reactors and rocketry so much highly respected that they are going to say that how difficult can it be? Is it rocket science? They talk about it like that, right? Why is rocket science so difficult? Because you're dealing with huge amount of energy. When you're dealing with huge amount of energy, what is important? The accuracy is important. You make even a tiniest of flaw and it is all going to be a catastrophic failure. I'll tell you a few examples. There was a component of Vikas engine, and in that there was a bore. Someplace there was a bore, and the bore was supposed to be 10 mm, 10.2 mm, let us say 10.2 mm, and it turned out to be it was 10.29 mm, and it turned out to be 10.19 mm, something like that. Little bit of mistake over there in manufacturing it, and it caused the failure of the whole launch vehicle. So the tiniest of mistake, what happened in the Kalpana Chawla incident, a small dent was present in the space shuttle, and when it was re-entering, that small dent caused the whole failure, death of 7 lives over there. In 1983, there was another failure in space shuttle. There was a small change in the size of the, what do you call it? It was, I think, an orifice. It was a sealant, right? And because of the cold weather, it got compressed. And because of that, it was not able to seal things properly. And because of that, the whole solid stage failed just after the launch, and 7 lives just like that went away, right? So the tiniest of mistake that you make over here is very, very critical. So I was bringing it back to, let us go to Sriharikota. So obviously now what they are trying to do is establish Sriharikota, and over there they want a launch pad because they want rockets to be launched from there itself, because now they want something from East Coast. So at that time, Sriharikota is jungles taken over by tribes. Now they have to go over there, talk to those tribe people that we need this land and we are going to give you jobs. And same way it went out in Trivandrum also, that we need this land and we are going to establish this, we are going to give you jobs in future and all that. Right. So right now also I went to Sriharikota multiple times, and it is humongous. It is as big as the city Chennai itself. So you can understand, and it is not like that much populated. It is mostly jungle only. So Sriharikota is so huge now. Without a vehicle, you cannot move from one building to another building because they are spread away. Why are they spread away? Because of the dangerous propellants that they deal with. So all the solid stages that you see in PSLV or GSLV Mark II or GSLV Mark III, they are manufactured over there in Sriharikota itself, right? And these are so dangerous, and there have been multiple, I think 1 or 2 explosions in the past, and people have actually died. It is written over here in this book also. There has been, I think, 1 accident in VSSC. Right now also the Rohini rocket and all are manufactured there only. The ones that take off from Tumba, and those which take off from Sriharikota, they are manufactured over there. And there has been big accident over there in Sriharikota also once back in the past. And one person, just after the accident, you can understand, lives have been lost, people have died over there, and now you have to somehow continue because of the dream that Vikram Sarabhai showed its disciples, right? And what are you going to do? Because the workers are terrified. We are not getting paid enough over here. Nobody can pay us enough to die, right? And then what the leaders do? The leader went over there and he picked those propellants with his own hands, obviously with safety devices, but he did it himself. And then 2 more people joined, and then 3 more people joined. And they said that if you want this to keep on going, we have to take these risks. And I promise that this will never happen again, because now we have learned from it. That's what the guts that the leaders of ISRO had at that time. Those are the people who made ISRO to what it is today, right? Some other day I'm going to talk about more stories that these people told or talked about in the ISRO induction training program personally. So you can understand what kind of organization it is by seeing it today, but you'll only understand what it takes by looking at the history. That is why we are talking about history of rocketry, right? So after that, somewhere around, let us bring it straight to 1990s, SLV3 launched, and at that time also there were a lot of failures. SLV3 basically stood for, or SLV stands for satellite launch vehicle, because now they are trying to launch satellites. So it was again and again failing. It went up and then it went to the sea. It went up, it went to Bay of Bengal. The reporters were making fun of people at ISRO. That what are you doing? You are taking all my tax money and you are just putting it in Bay of Bengal. They even called satellite launch vehicle as sea loving vehicle. Then ISRO people came up with augmented satellite launch vehicle ASLV, and then they call it always sea loving vehicle. Right? So it was failing again and again, and that is why Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam is respected so much. He was the project director when SLV actually launched successfully. And after that only DRDO said that we need you to build missiles and come over here. And he was also a chairman over there for a long time. And the crazy stories, man. When Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam died, people went to his home and to see what things they have and find out his belongings and all. What they found, just found 2 clothings of DRDO. That's it. And nothing, such simplistic life. That person was the president of this country. Those are the people who made this country, right? So after that, ASLV launched, and then PSLV came into the picture. It also failed, but PSLV, after its first failure, they made it so well that it has never failed again. Never. When it comes to launch vehicle, it never failed. In 2017, there was a problem in heat shield separation, but the launch vehicle, when it comes to launch vehicle, it never failed, man. That is how reliable they have made PSLV. It is just as reliable as any other launch vehicle can get in this world, right? Okay, I think we'll need another episode of history of ISRO. Right now we talked about somewhere around 1960s to somewhere around 1970s or 1980s. But put your comments down. What do you want to be included in the history of ISRO? Down in the comment section, you can let me know if you are watching it on YouTube. If you're listening to me on Spotify or Google Podcast or any other audio platforms, the video version will be available on YouTube. You can enjoy that over here as well. Sometimes I show some pictures that can be help to represent what I'm talking about. And I'm really glad because of the support that you guys have shown. I never expected that there might be a lot of nerds like me who are interested in rocket science. And I'm happy that I'm able to gather a crowd like this. You guys are amazing. I'll keep on the Spacecast coming. I'm already in talks with a person who is very, very interested in rocket science and is very experienced in rocketry. And he's going to come in the podcast next week, and we are going to talk about space capsules. We are going to talk about Dragon capsule. We are going to talk about the capsule that was there in Apollo missions, or the one that was used in Soyuz missions. So we are getting on human rated. All right. And every now and then we are going to come with new topics. Akash Tyagi sir was saying that he wants to talk about cryogenic engines in the Spacecast podcast. So he's going to come soon too. So it's going to be an amazing time. This podcast is going straight to the moon, maybe further. That's about it, guys. I'll see all of you in the next one. If you enjoyed this podcast, there are a few other podcasts that you might also enjoy. The Stock and Fire podcast, it is on general topic. It is available on the YouTube channel Amalgam. I do it with Komal. The link will be down in the description box. The other podcast is Momentum podcast. It is on career. If you want to become an ISRO scientist, you want to go in that path, the hurdles that you're going to face, I already know that. So I talk about a lot of things over there, and we have a lot of guests over there as well. So follow those podcasts. Also, the audio platforms will be having all the podcasts that we are having on YouTube channels and all that. So you can just listen to it. If you want to do it while working out, if you want to do it while running, if you want to do it while traveling, then that is also possible. I'll see all of you in the next one. Till then, bye.